Okay, good morning, good morning. So I thought as part of our back to basics, it would be really helpful to answer some of the frequently asked questions we get about starting a business, naming a business, what do I do if, right? That seems to be one of the things. I know that fear is like fomenting in people when they're like, well, what if this? Well, what if that? Well, what if this? Well, what if that? And that's why, like, one of my big themes as I'm revamping bookkeeper training school is to be where you are. Like, let's be where you are right now. Okay. And so when you're forming your business, when you're naming your business, we need to do that based on your circumstances right now. Not all the what ifs, not all the maybes, not all the should be's, but right now. Okay. So I think that's probably my first piece of advice is that when you're forming your business, do it for where you are right now. Because I think especially the people who are in bookkeeper training school, you see, it's not like a tremendous amount of work to form a business, right? There's a couple of key things that you need to do, and we'll talk about that a little bit today. But like you can, if you decide like you want to start really, really basic, you can do that. And then later on, right, you can change it. And so, people get like so stuck in like the first, like, I don't know if I want to be a DBA or an LLC or what I want to name my business or what I'm going to do, or should I use my address or should I get a PO box and all the things. Okay. So let's go through some of the decisions that you need to make when you start a business. And if you guys have any questions, you can feel free, you can leave them in the comments below. Okay. So the first thing that you need to do is you need to decide on the name of your business, right? So what are you going to put out there as the name of your business? So for a very, very long time, my business name was Kristen Ingram CPA. That's it. That's all it was. It was very simple. That was my business's name from 2006 until the end of 2020. So 14 years, I just used my name. Okay. And be like, well, I don't like my name. My name's too common. My name's too this. My name's too that. Okay, fine. If you don't want to do that, that's fine. That's like the easiest way to set up a business, because if you decide you don't want to do an LLC, you don't need a DBA or anything. You can just use your name. Hi. And that's what I did for a really long time. I just used my name. And it was super simple, and I was a business. It was great. For 2021, actually at the end of 2020, I formed marginfulbusiness.com. Or I bought marginfulbusiness.com and I formed Marginful Business LLC. And the reason that I formed an LLC, remember, this is not legal advice, you have to make your own decisions, but the reason that I formed an LLC was because Jeff and I are starting to accumulate assets. I'm also starting to hire contractors in my firm. And so now that it's not just me anymore, now I need a little bit of legal structure around me. Also, we have assets that we want to protect. And so we wanted to have an LLC to protect those assets. So when people ask me, should I form an LLC or should I do a DBA? And a DBA stands for doing business as. That means you're not using your legal name. So it's you doing business as another name. Okay. Some states it's called a fictitious name. Okay. But that's what a DBA does, is it basically allows you to legally use another name as your own, okay, for your business. So when people ask me, should I form, an LLC or should I do a DBA? I always ask them, okay, so right now, right, not later on, right now, okay, do you have things you need to protect? Do you have assets you need to protect? Okay. Are you going to be hiring people right away? Those are the kinds of things that you need to look at. Now, some people just say, listen, I just want to get an LLC now. It's really cheap in my state. If I do a DBA, like I have to put it in newspapers and stuff, and it's such a pain. So I'm just going to pay the small fee, become an LLC, and be done with it. That's fine too. You have to look at the cost of an LLC in your state today and a cost, and and the cost going forward. Okay. That's really, really important. Like California is incredibly expensive to run an LLC. They have like an $800 per year franchise tax. Some states it's very expensive to form your LLC, and then it's expensive to keep it going. Like Massachusetts is $500 to form it and $500 a year. And so for some people, that's a lot of money to get started. So, it just depends on where you are right now, what you need to protect, right? And that's it. Like, don't think, well, what if I need the LLC in 3 years? If you need an LLC in 3 years, you can form one. It's okay. It's fine. You can do it. Okay. So we get a lot of questions about, okay, so if I don't want to use my name, if I don't like my name for some reason, or I just don't want to use it, how do you come up with a business name? Okay. And I think that there are a couple different ways you can do this. So one is to know who your ideal customer is. And I have a lot of people that fight me on this one, but if you know who your ideal customer is, if there was like a person that you could get as a client that would just like make you feel all the feels. Okay. Who would that person be? What industry would they be in? How many kids would they have? What type of business would they run? Like, basically make a fictitious person, or you could use a real person if you want. Okay. So if there's somebody like out in the business world that you're like, oh my God, I love this person, there's this insurance agent in my town and she is just amazing. And if I could get her as a client, like that would just be the ideal. And then you build this ideal customer. And the reason that that's important is because when you're doing your marketing, when you're coming up with, your logo and your colors and what you're going to post on Facebook, you're always going to go back and say, would this person be attracted by this marketing, be attracted by this logo, be attracted by the colors I'm picking? That's why that's really important. Okay. And I've seen people who come to me with like, these logos that are beautiful, but when I look at the logo and I ask them who their ideal customer is, they don't seem to jive together. So that's why it's so important. So then I say, okay, if you know who your ideal customer is, then let's think about, so what are some words, some terms that would attract this person to your business? So if you're doing bookkeeping services or any services for that matter, for this ideal customer, how would that make them feel? What will that do for them? And just kind of jot down some words that you think will work and see if you can get those into the name of your business. If you're going to do location based, so we have one person in the group that their business is Blue Ridge Bookkeeping, right? Which is because they're in the Blue Ridge Mountains. We've had people do things that were very specific to where they are, right? So like, for example, I live in the Pioneer Valley, which is basically part of Western Massachusetts and Connecticut. You can do like Pioneer Valley bookkeeping. There's a lot that you can kind of play around with like geography, with where you are. We have some people that, are like with their state, are using their state as part of their name. We have some people that they're like, I really like, I think we have one that's like Pink Elephant Bookkeeping. And it's just because like that name just resonated with her. She really, really liked it. So, there's lots of different things that you can do with your name. You just got to kind of play with things. And one of the cool things about being in bookkeeper training schools, like you can post like, hey, this is the name I've come up with. What do you guys think? And so once you've got the name, right, then what you want to do is you want to Google search that. You want to make sure that nobody else locally, especially if it's local, right? You want to make sure that nobody locally has that. You want to make sure you can get a good domain for it. And your domain and your business name don't have to be the same. So for a very long time, like I couldn't get kristeningram.com. I just couldn't. Somebody else has it. And so I said, okay, what I'm going to do, And this was back in like '06, right? Because I was thinking about domains and most people weren't. I actually got klicpa.com as my domain. So super, super short. I love super short domains. Always looking for shorter domains. We just bought ingramdm.com. So instead of like ingramdigitalmedia.com, we got ingramdm.com. It doesn't go anywhere yet, but I have it and it's on the plan. We're always looking for things so that we can shorten some of our longer domains. And so I'd be thinking about that. So like a lot of people want to be somethingbookkeepingservices.com. Just see if you can get something bookkeeping, right? I would not like abbreviate words. So I wouldn't try to like take the vowels out of bookkeeping or try to make bookkeeping shorter somehow. But you can, there's different ways you can kind of play around with it. So that way the name is shorter. Okay. People ask me all the time, should I do like .net, .org, any of the new extensions? Like you can now get like .ninja. We have .mom as we have bts.mom, which is super, super short. So I love the new domain extensions, right? So that's like the .mom, the .ninja. I think those are very cool, but I think a lot of people don't know that those exist. And so like if you say like if I say bts.mom, people want to go to btsmom.com, right? And so you've got to kind of play with that a little bit, make sure that your audience knows that that is really an extension. Because I think a lot of people don't get that. With like .net or .org. So .orgs are supposed to be for nonprofit businesses or for nonprofit organizations. So I try to stay away from .orgs. .nets, I would not buy a .net or a .co if the .com is active, because people automatically default to .com, right? I just think that's like a natural thing, right? Because we go to .coms all day. And so a lot of the other extensions just haven't caught on yet. I think they will. I think we're definitely going to get there. But I would certainly make sure if you're going to buy, like there's sometimes that you type in, I get this question a lot. I went online, I looked up a website, to buy the .com, and it's like $15,000. Why are some of them $8 and some of them are $15,000? So the ones that are really expensive are actually owned by somebody and they're up for sale. Okay. So there are people who just buy domains to resell them. There are some people that buy domains with an idea and then they don't do anything with them. So like we own like 100 domains. And some, like most of them are pointing to a website, right? They're pointing somewhere. But some of them, it's like an idea that we have that we're like, you know what? I just want to get this in case I want to do something with it later. And so I'm just going to buy this so that we have it. And typically when that happens, that means that when you type in the URL, when you type in the domain, it just goes back to Namecheap, right? Which is where we buy our stuff from. And so if you want to buy the .net because there's nothing really going on with the .com, that's okay. You're just going to have to make sure that like, you really emphasize the fact that it's a .net, not a .com. So, okay. So once you have your business name, once you decide if you're going to register your DBA or your LLC, an LLC you register at the state level, a DBA is registered at the county level or the town level. Okay. It just depends on your government. So in the Northeast, where we don't have strong counties, you usually register with your town. If you are in most other parts of the country, frankly, you're probably going to register with the county because you have a strong county government. So just check with both and see what happens. So you register your business, and then once you register your business, then you can get an EIN. Your EIN it stands for an employer identification number. And I know a lot of people are like, wait, I don't have employees. Okay. The reason it's called employer is because that refers to businesses. Okay. And because BIN is actually used for something else with the IRS. So they call it an EIN. And an EIN is like a social security number for your business. And they're free to get. You can get it on IRS.gov. You don't need a service to do this. You don't need a service to get your LLC. You don't need a service to get your DBA. You can do all this stuff. And we walk people through it in bookkeeper training school all the time. Get an EIN for your business, even if you just use your name, because if you're doing bookkeeping for a company and that company pays you, they might need to send you a 1099. That means they're going to want your number. They're going to want your social security number or your EIN. I'm doing, I mean, with all the fraud out there, it's kind of crazy, but I'm trying to protect my social security number as much as I can. So I don't want to be giving that out all over the place, and you shouldn't either. So by having an EIN, it's going to help you protect your social security number. Okay, so you don't have to give it out to people. If you don't get an EIN, then you will have to give out your social security number as the identifying number for your business, and you don't want to do that. So figure out your name, get your domain. If you're not using your own name, you need to register a DBA or an LLC, and then you get your EIN. That's like the basics of starting your business. Now, I get a lot of questions about like, okay, so should I use my home address or should I get a PO box? So if you do an LLC, all of the information about the LLC is public information, right? Now, most people don't know how to look it up, okay? But some people do. And as the owner of the business, your personal information has to be on there, including your home address. So if you're going to register an LLC, yes, you can get a PO box for your business. But a lot of times they want you to have a physical address. You can't just have a PO box. And I know if you use like the UPS store to get your PO box, which I just priced that out, it's about $250 a year to get the smallest mailbox you can from the UPS store, at least where we were looking down in Florida. You can use that as a physical address for your business. Now, we have pretty much always used our home address for our businesses. We're still deciding if we're going to get a PO box down there when we get there. We were going to try to get it ahead of time. It's a big thing, and you need notaries and all sorts of things. So we're going to wait till we get down there, but we might end up getting a box when we get down there. And that's just to kind of separate things, right? We don't get a lot of mail for the business for either one of them, but we're still trying to determine what we're going to do with that. But I honestly don't think we're going to, just because it's another thing that you've got to go check, and if there's mail, you've got to go get it. It's a whole thing. So basically, the gist of that is that your address, if you have an LLC, your personal address is going to be listed. Okay. It's going to be listed on all the forms that you fill out, and that will be available online. So you just have to determine, do I want the public address for my business to be my address, or do I want it to be something like a UPS store? The other question I get a lot is, I'm forming an LLC and it's asking for a registered agent. Can I be my own registered agent, or do I need to hire somebody? So states require a registered agent because they want a physical place where they can drop off like important paperwork. So if like a business gets sued and they need to serve the business with court papers, they want there to be a place where those can be delivered. Now, some states, they freak people out because they're like, it has to be something where there's always somebody there from 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, and it freaks people out. It's like, well, what if I have to go to the grocery store? What if I have to pick up my kid from school or whatever? So listen, there's no registered agent that is always going to be there from 9 to 5. Okay, it's just not going to happen. And so, as you know, if you want to use your home address, you want to be your own registered agent, that is perfectly fine. I have been the registered agent for all of my businesses. And again, this isn't legal advice. You know, I want to make sure that's a disclaimer. I'm just telling you what I do. But I've always been my own registered agent. Registered agents are typically pretty inexpensive because honestly, they're not doing a whole lot for your business. They're literally, you're paying a fee to be able to put their information on your form just in case something might happen at some point in the year. So typically a registered agent is about $35 to $69 a year. Okay. And literally their only purpose is to collect, you know, official mail, you know, from the state, or, you know, if you ever get served with papers in a lawsuit, that's their whole job. So that's why it's super cheap. Okay. So if you want to hire, there's registered agent services. You can Google registered agent in your state and you'll find some, but I've always been my own registered agent for my businesses. And like I said, I've been in business for, this is year 17. So, just kind of keep that in mind. Okay. So let me see. So let me know if you guys have any other questions about this. I'm happy to answer them. If you're in bookkeeper training school, a lot of this stuff is in bookkeeper training school already. But I just kind of wanted to give you guys that so you have this. I know some of you are kind of, you know, you're trying to figure this out on your own after watching the free training. And so I kind of wanted to give you a little bit of that to help you on the journey. If you want more formalized learning with us, please go to bookkeepertrainingschool.com. Check out the free training that we offer and let us know if you have any questions. I hope you guys have a great day. We are packing this weekend for our move. And I can't wait to show you what the new place looks like. All right, I will talk to you soon. Take care. Bye.
Thank you for listening to Small Biz Mama with Kristen Ingram. If you'd like to learn how to create more margin in your life, please visit us at smallbizmama.com. That's smallbizmama.com.